Welcome to Machines More. We're going to take a little semi-detour here from the Meshlicious series and take a look at a new fan option. This is the new Arctic P12 ARGB PWM 0 dB. And no, that doesn't mean the fan is impossibly silent, and I'll explain that shortly. A big thanks to Arctic for sending these by for review. Let's get started. The regular Arctic P12 has long been a fan favorite, featuring good static pressure and airflow performance while offering suitably quiet operation. And this one was especially reasonably priced in the 5-pack retail configuration. However, until now, if you wanted a high performance and quiet fan with RGB, you would have had to look at other options. With this redesign, Arctic puts the shine in the fan by adding addressable RGB, while maintaining performance characteristics that users are already familiar with. That doesn't mean it's entirely the same and just with RGB, because there are definitely a few differences. So first off, the ARGB version has a different frame with rubber dampeners at the mounting points. And even though the blade design is similar to the original P12 with 5 widely spaced blades, the ARGB version features a rim surrounding the blades. And this does help to disperse the RGB lighting, and we'll get to performance comparisons shortly to see if there is a noticeable difference between these two blade designs. As for the RGB, the fan features a circle of 12 LEDs underneath the center of the hub, and these are 5-volt compatible, so they will work quite seamlessly as long as your motherboard has a 3-pin 5-volt ARGB or DRGB header, and you can program these to any available effect on your motherboard's RGB software. It's not over the top. The lighting is fairly concentrated in the center of the fan, and the translucent blades do help to disperse it. But this definitely is not a super flashy RGB fan where even the frame features lighting also. The last major difference with this is the addition of the 0 decibel feature. And that means that when given a low enough PWM signal, the fan will actually shut off and stop spinning. Most PWM fans, such as the original P12, do have a minimum RPM even when given a low PWM signal. So fanless operation is not possible. So with the original, it's something around 200 RPM. However, with the ARGB one, it will shut off. This might be completely useless to you, certainly in a case like the Meshlicious that relies on 2 major fans for airflow. I wouldn't consider letting the fans idle when the CPU temps are low, since you do still want some movement for other components, but in the right system, this could be a helpful feature. From my testing, that cutoff point was at 14% PWM, so anything below that level, the fan would stop spinning. Couple things I like about the features. Both the 4-pin PWM cable and the ARGB cables are daisy chainable with what Arctic calls power sharing technology, or PST, and you can just connect one of these fans to your motherboard and then connect all the other ones additionally in sequence. If you do have an RGB component that's not this fan, and you probably want to connect it at the end unless it also has a daisy chainable cable. And so that's accomplished by a short segment of cable that is split off the main cable. And it's very convenient, so you don't have to mess with the extra cost and cable management from splitters. But whether you're connecting off of a splitter or in sequence, you do have to make sure your header can supply enough power. For this one, it's rated at a low 0.11 amps for the fan, and for the LED 0.4 amps. So for reference, most but not all boards have fan headers that supply 1 amp, and the ARGB headers are typically around 3 amps. Of course, if you want a colorful looking fan with mediocre performance, you have plenty of options to choose from on the market. But the P12 does have a performance legacy behind it to uphold. So to test these out, I benched 2 of these in the Meshlicious on this ML240 Illusion Rad against the original P12. And the original P12s typically perform about a couple degrees behind the reference grade Noctua NF-A12 by 25. This was a simple noise normalized CPU only test, so I adjusted the RPMs of the tested fans to yield the same noise levels as the NF-A12 by 25s do at 1200 and 1500 RPM. The P12 ARGB does have a little more measurable noise at the lower tested level than the original, so it cannot spin up as fast for the same noise level, and that resulted in about a degree deficit at the lower RPM. The reference grade NF-A12 by 25 does excel in this application, given that it has fantastic static pressure to noise performance. especially at this 1200 RPM level. So moving on to the higher RPM setting, which is where some users might consider capping their fan curve, the noise normalized RPM gap is less between the two P12 versions, and at this level they are within half a degree. Essentially, I'd say they are functionally identical in performance. So as a whole, I think the performance is really good with the ARGB version, but it does appear to lag behind the non-RGB version by just a little bit. Against the premium priced NFA 12x25s, the gap is present. Basically at 1200 RPM, the Noctuas perform similarly to the P12s at 1450 RPM. A different way to think about that performance gap is that for similar thermal performance, the P12s have about a 0.8 decibel penalty in noise. So for acoustics, let's take a listen to the fans at the noise normalized test levels, and then I'll take you through a range of RPM levels for the P12 RGB, and I'll conclude the acoustic measurements with what a noise gap might sound like in an actual case when you're comparing the Noctuas at 1200 RPM versus the P12 ARGB at 1440 RPM. So one thing you might have noticed with the original P12 is that purring or the motor growl at the higher RPM level. And even though I scoured the RPM range of the new ARGB fans, I couldn't detect such a growl, even when ramping up or down. And of course, I did only test 2 of these fans here for that growl, but basically every P12 original that I've ever tested has had it. So I think actually these are a big improvement in that regard. As a radiator or heatsink fan, these would be a great RGB option, and you're really not giving up too much performance against the regular P12s. I think the RGB appearance is well balanced, and as a case fan, there's not going to be much measurable performance difference at all, and you'll be running these at lower RPMs. They're going to be moving similar amounts of air through your system, and the new ARGB fans do represent a good balance of performance, looks, and price. Now speaking of price, there's no 5-pack fun bundle for these just yet, but they do come in a 3-pack for about $43 US, and they also come in a single for about $17 US. So you do save about $3 or so when getting the 3-pack. And they do come in at a lower price than the Bionics P120 ARGB that Arctic released earlier this year. So we'll leave these linked down below. Please use those links if you're interested. Hope you found the review helpful today. Please give a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching today.